Hey creeps and peeps, welcome back. Today I've got another true crime plan with me for you, or a planning with murder as everyone's favorite human, Shanice of Planners and Tacos, suggested. Thank you all so much for all the love and feedback on my last one. I am so pumped that you guys are on board with this idea too. So before we hop in, I do want to give a quick trigger warning or content warning. This case does involve sexual assault, rape, and violence against women. So yeah, this case was a very last minute addition to the lineup. I was prepping another scammy, schemy case. Then I found out about this one, which I had never heard of before. And it seems to be a pretty unknown case. There's not too much info out there about it. But this one goes out to all of my fellow Big Brother fans out there. It's All Stars finale week, for better or for worse, but we'll talk about that in another plan with me. But this case seems very fitting for this week. If you're a Big Brother fan, even if you didn't watch her season, you probably still know her name. Shima Simone was the center of one of the most iconic and explosive moments in Big Brother history when she threw her mic in the hot tub and was expelled from the house in a blaze of glory. But what you might not know is that prior to Big Brother in 1999, Shima Simone survived a brutal attack by a serial rapist and murderer dubbed the Bathtub Killer. And like the badass that she is, her quick instinct and action would later lead to his arrest. So on September 17th, 1996, Tanku returned home early from work to his Arlington, Texas apartment. He found the door deadbolted from the inside, but just assumed his live-in girlfriend, Christine Vu, was showering or in the bathroom and didn't really think anything of it. So he went out to his car to smoke a cigarette and just waited out, assuming she'd be done soon. He went back a bit later, but it was still locked. So he left again and tried calling from a payphone. He didn't get an answer, so he started to get worried. When he went back the third time, the door was magically unlocked. He instantly knew something was off and called her name out, again to no answer. He searched the apartment and found her body gagged and hogtied with duct tape in their bathtub. None of this looked good for him, like in the slightest. And if there's anything true crime has taught us, it's that it's always the husband. But spoiler alert, in this case, it actually wasn't, for once. But it's a very, very sus story, and authorities were just not buying it, especially since there was no sign of forced entry. It all just seemed way too convenient and implausible. But Tang steadfastly maintained his innocence and fully cooperated by providing blood and hair samples. Evidence showed that Christine had been raped before being strangled to death. There were also latent prints left at the scene, most notably a print with a very distinct scar running through it on the deadbolt. It didn't match Christine, Tang, or any personnel involved in the investigation, and it was just enough to keep the heat of suspicion off Tang. So jumping forward a bit to Christmas Eve 1996, Wendy Prescott was expected at a relative's house for Christmas Eve festivities. They were a super tight-knit family, so it caused concern when 11 p.m. rolled around and she still hadn't shown up and no one had heard from her. So her aunt and uncle went to her apartment and found her naked, face down, bound, and strangled. When police arrived to the same complex where Christine Vu had met the same fate just a few months earlier, the identical apartments and crime scenes left them with an overwhelming sense of deja vu. They found a dust thumbprint on the TV stand, but since the prints were from different fingers, they were unable to match it to the latent print found at Christine's apartment. However, the semen did carry a similar genetic profile. It not only confirmed that the perp was the same, but it also definitively ruled out Tang as that suspect. Authorities assumed that these were not the perp's first crimes. You don't just start out with violent rapes and murders. That's definitely an escalation. So they ran the prints through AFIS, which is the automated fingerprint identification system, and to their surprise, there were no hits. They canvassed the complex trying to find any kind of connection or lead that they could. They obtained hundreds of DNA samples, and over the next 18 months, they would clear over 300 suspects with DNA, fingerprints, and alibis. They had so much evidence, but zero viable leads. That brings us to February 23rd, 1999. In the middle of the night, police responded to reports of a sexual assault on Greek Row at the Alpha Kappa Alpha house on the University of Texas Arlington's campus. The victim was beaten so badly she was barely recognizable. She said she awoke to a strange man in her room, and with a gun to her head, he told her to do what he said and he wouldn't kill her. This is when her fight or flight instinct kicked in, and Shima Simone bit his penis as hard as she possibly could. This set him off, and he beat her, leaving her lying naked on the floor, bloodied, bruised, and disoriented. Semen was obtained from a rape kit, and Shima was able to give authorities a detailed description of her attacker, a black male with a light complexion in his mid-20s. After this description was broadcast, police received a chilling phone call. It was Wendy Prescott's friend, and she told the officer, "The girl who was attacked at the sorority house should have been me." She explained that she had recently moved out of that exact room in the Alpha Kappa house to get away from her stalker ex-boyfriend. DNA ruled him out as a suspect, but this tip did allow authorities to connect Shima's attack to Christine's and Wendy's, and they were able to rule out anyone who didn't fit Shima's physical description. The change in MO with allowing Shima to live perplexed investigators because perps don't usually de-escalate after escalating to murder. So they started looking at other unsolved rape cases and added the bite mark scar Shima likely left to his physical description, stating that the suspect may have an injury or defect on his penis. This linked them to another sexual assault case in a nearby city. Still, though, they had no leads. Fast forward to 2000, as a Hail Mary, they ran the prints through a brand new cutting-edge software system called iAFIS. This new software detected points of comparison that they weren't able to before. And they finally got a fucking hit. Dale Devon Chenette. They referenced their lists from when they had originally canvassed the apartment complex in 1996, and of fucking course he was on it. He lived at the same complex as Christine and Wendy at the time, but literally nothing about him raised any kind of red flags or suspicion. He had no criminal record then, but after a 1999 burglary, his prints were added to iAFIS. Upon his arrest, he was pretty uncooperative in general, providing no explanation or reason as to why his prints were found in Christine's and Wendy's apartments, and refusing to provide DNA samples, which were eventually obtained through a search warrant. They matched the scar on his penis to Shima's bite, and soon after, in September of 2000, DNA specialists did confirm a positive match. By the time his trial started in January of 2003, DNA linked him to 3 additional rapes. He was found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to death by lethal injection, and was executed in 2009. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the very dark, depressing story of the Bathtub Killer. I know it was a lot. I'm sorry. But my next case is going to be a scammy one, so it'll be a lot later. But yeah, thanks so much for hanging out today, and I hope I see you in the next one. Later days.